So, episode 51.
Yes, I believe that is correct. We ended off at 50 at the end of the year. So,
Exactly, which is very convenient.
mhm.
So we've got a few things to talk about today. It may not be a very long episode, but a few things. So a case that I just heard about today, actually, a woman by the name of Claire Marsh. So it's actually pretty awful. It goes back a fair way, but what happened was actually really awful. This occurred in July 2000. A woman, 37, was walking along a canal in London, and she encounters a group of about a dozen young men and women. It isn't clear how many women were in the group. There's at least one, but there's maybe some suggestion that there were other women there as well. Anyway, apparently it was initially friendly, and she actually sort of walked with them for a little while. And then one of them actually kicked her into the canal. Okay, so she's then they've reached out their hand and helped her out of the canal. But then they've started to accost her, and they actually, two of the boys, because they were 12 and 15, actually raped her. But what's happened is there's a woman who was there, who was 18, so an adult, by the name of Claire Marsh. And it seems that maybe she didn't initiate the entire thing, but she did really egg it on. It isn't clear to what extent she was driving it initially, but once it was going, she was really egging it on. She apparently ripped the woman's top off. She pinned the woman down and encouraged the two boys to rape her. And this poor woman has managed to escape, get recaptured briefly, managed to escape again, and then ran for about a mile until she got home. And the reason that she was able to actually escape them is because a taxi driver happened to just, turn up, and it startled them, and they backed off, and she was able to get away. But yeah, so Claire Marsh was convicted of rape. The two boys, actually, and there were two other boys too, juveniles, who were also charged but were not convicted. But the two boys actually pled guilty, and I think served 5 years, or was sentenced to 5 years imprisonment. They didn't serve 5 years. I'll get to that. But Claire Marsh was sentenced to 7 years imprisonment, which I suppose as an adult she's going to get a greater sentence. But also this is indicative of of how the court saw how much of a driver of the whole thing she was. So anyway, yeah, so she was imprisoned. She pled not guilty, but went into court and was
Mhm.
convicted. Now, I just wanted to mention something. This is something a lot of people don't realize, and I remember this from my own training in the police. But there's four different ways that you can be convicted of an offence, only one of which is actually committing it. So you can commit the offence, you can assist someone else to commit the offence, which in this case Claire Marsh did because she was holding down the woman while she was being raped. You can facilitate the offence, which would be something like a lookout. And you can also counsel other people to do the offence, which is basically encouraging them to do it or engaging them to do it. And she did that as well. So there are two of the four ways in which a person can be convicted, would
Mhm.
qualify in this case. So Claire Marsh, yeah, was sentenced to 7 years. However, it isn't exactly clear when, but they were all released early. It looks like it happened after about 3 to 4 years. And the reason that I'm not clear about this is because the date on the article in the Standard, which talks about this, is wrong. So I'm actually going to raise that with the Standard and ask them what the correct date is, or
Mhm.
get to correct it, because the article date online is claiming to be 2012, which simply can't be. That's years after all this happened. So probably somewhere around 2005, I think, would be the correct date for the article.
Mhm.
Anyway, yeah. So it looks like she was released after about 3 to 4 years, a few months after each of the two boys were released. Now that would put her around about 2003, 2004. It isn't really clear what happened after that. She's on the sex offenders registry for life. And I am going to see if I can find out a little bit more about what happened. But the trail does seem to go cold after that. Obviously, the British authorities know where she is because she's on the sex offenders registry. But maybe she changed her name, or maybe she's really keeping a low profile. But anyway, yes, she's believed to have been the youngest woman convicted of rape in the UK, by the way.
Okay. I'm just
Yep.
surprised that any conviction happened in that regard,
Well, I
to
think it
her
was
in particular. So,
it was so egregious, and I suspect that and her involvement was so obvious to everybody,
Mm.
that she was egging, she was holding the woman down, she ripped her top off, she was egging on the boys. I don't think there's any way. I've noticed that in the past too. They do often when we'll get a pass on this sort of thing, but
Oh yeah, yeah.
in particularly egregious cases, it can't be done. It's too obvious to everybody that she's committed the offence.
Yeah, yeah, I suppose so. It's like because people like J.K. Rowling still seem to think that women can't commit rape in general. That's just basically the takeaway I had based on what she says
Yep.
online.
Yep.
But you know, maybe show her this case, but then she'll probably say that, oh, it was all the boys' fault, you know. So
Yeah.
yeah.
There are some jurisdictions where women can't be convicted of committing a rape, right? But this is an important point. I have mentioned it a few times. I think it's something perhaps I should even mention more often. I do see people talking about this and getting these ideas a little bit confused in that they say women, for example, can't be convicted of rape. Assisting is always a way one can be convicted of an offence. So one doesn't have to have actually done the rape, and therefore any person
Mhm.
convicted assisting could be convicted of it. But
Right.
yes, there are certainly jurisdictions where women can't be convicted of committing the rape. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, that's probably a good one actually to raise on X, because I do make a point now of raising the sort of issues and getting a bit more factual basis for a lot of the arguments out
Hmm.
there.
Right.
And yeah, so anyway, that's all I have to say. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm going to
Yeah, I don't have much more to add to that one. So,
no, I'm going to find out what happened.
mhm.
If I
Right.
can. The next one I've got is 4B. Back when, so 4B, of course, really took off in November. No, in the Western world, I should clarify. 4B has actually been going in South Korea for a number of years. For those that don't know, 4B is a movement uh, that some Korean women have been embracing. I think even in South Korea, the numbers I suspect are really overstated. But essentially, there's no dating, no heterosexual sexual relationships, no heterosexual marriage, and no childbirth. And that's because the four words that talk about those concepts in Korean start with B. So the 4B movement. Back in November, when this was really getting going in the English-speaking world in the US, particularly after Trump was elected, it was briefly called the 4N movement, as in four no's. However, within days, the 4B became the dominant way that they're talking about it. So so the 4B movement is what it's called in English as well now. But here's the thing: there was a lot of media attention in November. There was an article I found in December where BuzzFeed talked about how men were reacting to it, and from January onwards, from January, it seems to be pretty quiet, which is pretty much what I expected.
Mhm.
Actually, it was really just I think it was really just a media beat up, and
Yeah.
of course the media's moved on now. It might pop up occasionally, but it's like all the sex strikes. It's just largely a media beat up. It's a good way of getting clicks.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, to be sure.
So yeah. So anyway, but of course, I'm a great one in believing that we should continuously raise these things and ask how it's all going. So I've asked on X, how's the 4B movement going. So we'll see what response I get.
Yeah, sure. Did you get a lot of it feedback on those things?
Not really. No.
Mhm.
The obviously I'm obviously the types of people who are feminists and others who are involved in that aren't inclined to respond to me on that sort of thing, but when their movement isn't going very well. So it's
Right,
like, as I
yeah.
said, all the sex strikes. I do that on the sex strikes quite a lot too. And when they
Yeah.
say they announce, and when they say there's another sex strike on, I say another one. I thought the last one was still going. So
Hmm.
yeah. But it's important to keep it in people's minds, to remind them that these sorts of things keep coming up in the media.
Yeah, to be sure. We're just reminding them to, we can't let you say it never happened, right?
Yeah, exactly, that's exactly right. And I'm a great believer in that. A lot of the
Hmm.
stuff I do now is actually recording what people are doing so that they can't
Hmm.
deny it later.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Yeah. And if it's not doing so well, I don't know why we've encouraged them. We wanted to wish them the best of luck, and outing yourself for avoidance.
Removing, removing yourself from the gene pool. Exactly,
Yeah,
that's
right.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Hmm.
So the next one is Wallace and Gromit. I believe which you
Hmm.
believe you saw recently, and how'd that go?
Yes, wife and I saw Wallace and Gromit: Vengeance Most Foul at long last. It came out, and it's a fine addition to the rest of the family of Wallace and Gromit movies, as far as I'm concerned. Uh, it's the return of that penguin, Feathers McGraw. He's kind of pulling some strings from in his uh, cell and zoo, but to hack into another one of Wallace's inventions and kind of try and get revenge and get the jewel again from the wrong trousers. So yeah, I thought I really had a good time. I definitely watch it again because Aardman's great, Wallace and Gromit is great.
Okay.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah.
So I have to admit, I've never seen a Wallace and Gromit movie,
You'll have
but
fun, I promise.
I think I probably should because I'm actually a big fan of Shaun the Sheep, and I think
Mhm.
possibly
Yes.
I think they're actually possibly by the same people. So
Oh,
I
they are.
probably
Yeah, yeah.
okay,
Well,
great. So I probably should
yeah.
have seen Wallace and Gromit then.
So, Shaun the Sheep is a spin-off character from a Wallace and Gromit film called A Close Shave. Yeah,
Okay.
he was a character in A Close Shave, and he became his own spin-off character
Yeah.
in the farm and everything.
Well, there you go. I
Yeah,
love Shaun the Sheep, so I really need to see Wallace and Gromit.
yeah, sure. And I love the Shaun the Sheep movie from 2006. It's one of my favorites.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And all the episodes are absolutely fantastic. In fact, you know what? I haven't seen any Shaun the Sheep in ages, and I think I probably need to do that too.
Oh
There we
yeah,
go.
you should. Yeah.
Yes.
I still need to see Farmageddon. That's the second Shaun the Sheep movie.
Oh,
So
I don't know if I've seen that one actually. There we
yeah,
go.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, Aardman's really great. Uh, Chicken Run is a classic, of course. Uh, I think it was one of the first films I saw when I was a kid that was stop motion.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, and it was just so well done. I was just kind of really interested in the particulars of that movie. It just everything looks so good. And I was I'm not just sitting back and watching and being entertained. I was actually being impressed by the effects at the time. So yeah, it was great to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
The first time I saw Shaun the Sheep, I just couldn't stop laughing. It was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah. But yeah. I mean, nothing horrible to say about it. I mean, there's one character that looked like a DEI hire, but it's it's the protege of the chief inspector, uh, who we saw once in Curse of the Were-Rabbit. But the same police chief is a character in this one, and the protege uh uh well, I mean, I could just be cruel in saying that, and because she's not a very bad character, but it's my s- ever cynical mind is kind of
Yeah.
gravitating towards that, but it doesn't ruin the movie at all, I think. So,
Okay. All
mm,
right. Well, when I watch it, then I'll give you my feedback on that.
sure, yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
So, anything else on Wallace and Gromit?
I don't think so, but
Okay.
I could talk about what I love about the series
Well,
without really a clear endpoint. So we
well,
can just kind of move on forward. So
fair enough. Well, I'm glad we had this conversation because it's one, it reminded me that I should see Wallace and Gromit, and two, reminded me that
mhm.
I haven't seen Shaun the Sheep in a while. So,
Yeah.
yeah, yes, I think that's I'll do both of those things.
Oh
So, all
yeah,
right. So
and yeah,
yeah, go on.
yeah, the Armor animations is really good. And recently I saw, I guess I really do have more to say. Is recently I saw for the first time the Pirates, band of Misfits, I think it is called in the United States. I think in the UK it was released as the Pirates in an Adventure with Scientists. I think it is. I think that's the movie.
Okay.
What's called in the UK, but. Yeah, so we saw that for the first time, and yep, it's tons of fun. It's got that Aardman Animations comedy, and as far as I'm concerned, great story. Um, um, And Arthur Christmas is a favorite Christmas movie of mine. That's a computer animated movie by Aardman, but I love it. Um, yeah, lots to recommend, really.
Yeah, that sounds good. I have heard of Arthur Christmas, but I have never seen it.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, I recommend just about anything from Aardman Animations. So,
Nice.
mm,
Okay. The last item I have, except for Zoe McLellan, and then I'll get
mhm.
to her after, of course. The last item I have is actually an anthropologist by the name of Elizabeth Weiss. And I've only recently become aware of Elizabeth Weiss, and she's doing some really good stuff in raising awareness about woke impacting anthropology. In particular, she's talking about, in fact, she actually had to retire from her job because and now researches independently as a result of speaking out about against these sort of problems. But essentially, there's a lot of problems. I was aware of some of them, but it's probably a big, even or more widespread than perhaps than I believed understood before. There's been a problem. I was aware in Australia, firstly, that uh, a lot of archaeological sites in Australia are related to the origin of Aboriginal Australians are being heavily restricted now, and in particular, there's one called Lake Mungo, which has a lot of valuable archaeological information, and scientists and archaeologists and so forth aren't able to look at the bones now and date them and so forth. They're being kept in situ. Sometimes they become uncovered from the sand. This is in the dead. Even also, it's worth noting that in Australia, just because we call something a lake doesn't mean that it has water in it. We have a lot of lakes in the center of the country that might have, water for, 3 weeks in a decade or something like that. So Lake Mungo's
Mm,
along those lines.
I see.
So there'll be the occasional heavy downpour in the center of the country, and they'll turn into lakes. So technically they are lakes, and then it'll drain away, and that'll be it for many years. Bones will get uncovered though at Lake Mungo, and they won't be taken and stored properly, and they'll deteriorate and are being damaged. And I've been really concerned for many years that information is being lost there, and there's a reason for that. And this does come down to my concerns over woke and so forth. If you look at the mainstream view today, you'll hear that Australian Aborigines have been in Australia for 65,000 years. Well, the number will vary a little bit, but around 60 to 65,000 years, pretty typical these days. And I actually don't doubt that the earliest origins are at that point, but they'll now push the position that there was no contact between, I think I may have mentioned this before actually, there was no contact between then and the arrival of Europeans, which happened a little bit before the British, by the way. The first
Mhm.
Europeans to arrive were actually Dutch. But it's not quite that simple. For one thing, we know the Macassans from Indonesia were trading with the Aborigines along the northern coastline. We don't know exactly when that started, but it's not unreasonable to assume it went back as far as the 14th century or possibly a little earlier.
Mhm.
It's not inconceivable that the Chinese made it here. That's far from proven, but 14th century Chinese coins have been found in Australia along the northern coastline. That doesn't mean the Chinese made it here, but it does mean that people who were trading with the Chinese, made it here. It also doesn't mean they made it in the 14th century because coins at the time were sometimes in use for a long time. So perhaps in the 16th century or 17th century, maybe it was the Macassans who dropped those coins, but it's possible Chinese made it. But anyway, so there's a lot more going on there. About 4,000 years ago, something happened in Australia. We're not quite sure what happened, but I think we got set. There was a group who came along and settled the country. But the mainstream view is absolutely to reject that today. But what we do know is, I'm getting on to North America too, by the way. But what we do know is about 4,000 years ago, the dingoes were introduced to Australia. The Tasmanian devil, which used to exist across the entire country, went extinct very quickly because the dingoes essentially killed them. And the dingoes never made it to Tasmania, which is why the Tasmanian devil remains there. But a lot of the other things happened. New fruits and vegetables were introduced, new cooking techniques were introduced, and in particular, and I must admit, I don't understand the basis yet for how they've established it, but apparently they're pretty confident that the languages in Australia changed about 4,000 years ago. And then I think from memory, about 88% of the Australian languages are descended from this more recent arrival. But they claim that it was just through trade contact, not through anybody getting off the boat. But I don't see how you can have dingoes arriving, plants arriving, cooking techniques changing, and language changing without some people settling here. So it seems likely to me that around, and there's some evidence, some genetic research which suggests this, but then it's been called into question more recently. Uh, I wonder about the more recent research, whether there's biases, the woke biases got into the research. It's hard
Yeah.
to say. But to me, aside from the genetic evidence, just the practicality of so many things occurring about 4,000 years ago, it seems likely that there must have been a settlement. But anyway, so a lot of this, getting back to Elizabeth Weiss, a lot of this in Australia could potentially be settled if we could do better research on the bones that are turning up, which of course is now being blocked.
Mhm.
Okay. The same thing is happening in North America. Also, there's reburials occurring too. So some archaeological, some skeletons and so forth that have been dug up and now being reburied. So in North America, same thing's happening. Skeletons that have been dug up are being reburied. There's restrictions on studying the skeletons, and which means important information regarding the arrival of humans in these continents, in North America and Australia and elsewhere, is potentially being lost. But interestingly enough, and I didn't realize this, Elizabeth Weiss mentioned that there in an article that uh, there are museums in the US, one in New York in particular, I believe, where they will actually warn about they will be displaying some bones, and they'll warn about spirits and so forth being in the bones, and don't stare at this sort of thing. They're taking uh, some religious views of certain groups and putting them in museums, which I don't think, and she doesn't think, is appropriate.
Right.
By
Yeah.
all means, by all means, mention them and say these groups believe this and believe that spirits existed in the bones. Yes, I'd be very interested to know that, but don't claim that there's any sort of legitimacy to that in a modern
Mhm.
scientific context. So
Right.
yeah. So anyway, and of course, a lot of these bones too are becoming less accessible to researchers, the ones that are in museums. And I said some of them being reburied. So this is an ongoing problem. Yeah, Elizabeth Weiss has been raising this, and yeah, she actually retired, and she received a voluntary settlement from the University of San Jose State University, uh, regarding regarding um, a lawsuit that she had with them. So, and then so she retired, got a settlement, retired, and is now speaking out about these sort of problems.
Mhm. Yeah. Where can we find a link to her work?
Oh,
Oh,
I don't have one right in front of me now, but I can certainly get one. Absolutely.
okay.
We can post it. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So she's also on X as well. So
Okay.
yeah. So yeah, it's good to see that people are raising these concerns. We've obviously got our area we specialize in. There are people specializing in other areas. This has quietly been as you can now probably tell, this is an area that I've quietly been concerned about for a number of years. Not something I've talked about so much, but it is good to see that there are people on top of this.
Yeah.
So yeah, so good work, Elizabeth Weiss.
Hmm.
I've got Zoe McLellan. If you don't have
Yeah.
anything else.
This was a short episode, folks. So yeah.
Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah.
It happens.
The
Our last
rest.
one was longer than expected, I think. So
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And it's we're just starting off the year. Nothing, well, I won't say nothing too crazy is happening, right? We've got that LA fire and everything like that, but I don't have much to comment on except the fact that the LGBT that are behind it, like trying to put the fire are a disgrace.
yes, there is actually a video circulating about
Hmm.
the head
Yeah.
of the fire department in LA
Oh
talking
yeah.
about her priority being LGBT IQ firefighters or something along those lines. I've actually been looking for a better. There's only a short one circulating on X. I'd like to find a longer copy of the interview, and I haven't actually found that yet. So,
Yeah, it's just a
yes,
tidbit right now. So yeah.
exactly. That's right. But I think possibly. when the dust settles in the next episode. Probably be a good thing to talk about.
Yeah.
Yep.
I figured I'd mention it now so we can kind of get a better head start next time. Yeah, because
Yeah.
we needed our
But
rest in this new year. So
yeah, but I certainly feel for the people in California who are having the fires. Obviously, we get a lot of those here in Australia too. One last thing I did want to mention on that, and I can't say that it's the problem. It's a problem in California, although I believe it has been raised as a problem. Uh, there's a lot of there can be a lot of material on the ground, sort of dead wood and so forth. In Australia, we do something called back burning, which is a controlled burn to actually destroy that material outside of the fire season, so that if a fire does occur, it's less of a problem. Some, but not all, but some environmentalist groups in the past in Australia blocked back burning, and it caused the summer fires to be much worse. I've seen a suggestion that that may have been occurring in California too, where environmentalist groups may have been blocking the back burning, preventing back burning from occurring, or whatever they happen to call it there, or preventing other clearing of the material from occurring. And that, of course, makes the fire worse because there's more material, more combustible material for it to, of course, consume. So, but yeah, after the last lot of really bad fires, nobody is blocking back burning here anymore. Unfortunately, it took a series of really bad fires for people to wake up to the problem.
gotcha.
Yeah.
All right.
But yes, as I said, I have heard a suggestion that something similar may be happening in California, but I guess we'll know more soon.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Shall I mention Zoe McLellan?
Yeah. Let's go ahead.
As of January 2025, a warrant is outstanding for the arrest of Zoe McLellan in relation to charges of kidnapping, child stealing, and child custody deprivation. McLellan is a public figure who has appeared in numerous popular television shows, including Star Trek Voyager, JAG, NCIS New Orleans, and Designated Survivor. Her face is familiar to millions. It is extraordinary that she's evaded detection for so long. McLellan was reportedly residing in an apartment in River Ridge, Louisiana in April 2021 and may still be residing in the area. McLellan grew up in the area of Port Orchard, Washington State, and may have returned to the area. Some sources believe that McLellan has left the United States and is residing in Canada or Costa Rica. Prior to disappearing, McLellan was known to use the alias Sarah Chandler. Anyone with any relevant information should contact the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office. Thank you.
All right. Catch you next
See you
time.
and to catch you next time.